Welcome back to another episode of Bully Ball. Today we are planning to have a special guest on, the co-host of one of the biggest Panthers podcasts on YouTube. I believe the biggest, actually. So he's going to be jumping on to break down this CMC trade with us, of course. You know, big trade, big day for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey just landed in the Bay Area, so he's probably on his way to get a physical right now. And then once he passes that physical, the deal will become official. So that's exciting stuff. It's a big day. I think he'll make it through for walkthroughs and to see the practice, kind of meet up with his teammates. So that should be good for him to see that. And yeah, so let's get into it.
Tony Montana, Tony Montana, Tony Montana, check up on my ear. Tony Montana, Tony Montana, Tony Montana, I'm about to cut the...
All right, and it looks like our special guest is here today, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him on stream. Dave, how you doing? Dave is one of the co-hosts of the Panthers Nation podcast. Like I said, one of the biggest Panthers podcast channels on YouTube. So how you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing good, man. How's things?
Oh, it's great over here, man. It's great on this side.
I figured it would be.
Got a little brewski celebrating over here. So let's get into this trade a little bit. So looking at it from the Panther side, of course. Let's see. You know, we played you guys a couple weeks ago. And ever since then, it seems like it's kind of unraveled for the Panthers. You know, Matt Rule gets fired. Robbie Anderson kind of has that little stint go on the sideline. Then he gets traded the next day. And then now CMC. What's happened since that Niner game?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, man. In my eyes, and I don't know how much Rashad talked about it when he did the pregame with you guys. In my eyes, I thought that Coach Matt Rule was a dead man walking coming into the season. So, because I felt like they probably should have done the deed at the end of 2021, but they made the decision to bring him back. When we started 0-2, the thought was, in my eyes, if we would have lost to the Saints, that would have been it. And I actually went to that game with Rashad, and we actually beat the Saints. So I said, all right. If we beat Arizona the following week, then he's got more time. If we lose to Arizona, it's a mirage. We're gonna play San Francisco in Charlotte, and y'all are gonna blow us out of the water, and that'll be game, set, and match. And he loses to Arizona, he gets blown out by San Fran, and that was that. And at that point, that was the moment where we knew, okay, now we're gonna figure out what things are going to change real quick. Fan base, a lot of portion of the fan base was like, let's tank it. I was like, no, we need to try to play hard for Steve Wilkes as the interim coach. And then the next thing you know, we started trading folks. Outburst Robbie Anderson. Robbie's gone. And then I said, well, it looks like they're ready to go ahead and make this happen. I was not an advocate of tanking, but a lot of the fan base was. I'm like, well, if you want to know what a tank looks like, it kind of looks like a rebuild too. So at that point, you got to trade your best assets. And I saw that. I was like, well, if you're going to trade somebody, CMC's got to be the first one to go. Like that's first up. You got to trade him. But if they're like, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. He's going to give us the most assets we're going to get out of anybody. So it was just a matter of time. And here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Was the Matt Rule firing kind of surprising to you? I know you said that you were kind of expecting it, but given that he was supposed to make, I know you guys paid him out like a pretty decent amount of money. So was that like surprising to you, or were you kind of expecting that and happy about it?
I mean, I'm never happy for somebody losing their job, but at the same time, I never was a fan of the hire to begin with. And then when you hear the backstory of, well, the owner insisted add an additional year to the deal to make sure we got him type of thing, and you give him all the control, you gave him all the personnel control. So in essence, you already have a GM that you know that you're going to get rid of in a couple of years. Then you do get rid of that GM. You bring in a new guy, and his hands are tied because the coach coach has final say in every personal decision that happens. So for me,
definitely.
it was just more of a matter of time. Like I know we were saying the process, we got to rebuild. It's a process, but they didn't continue to plan when they first brought him in. If they would have continued to plan, I would have been on board. But the moment you make the call to get rid of Teddy Bridgewater after 1 year to trade for Sam Darnold, I was like, yeah, you guys aren't patient enough to do this. You might as well go ahead and ask the coach to start this over because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
What we did, yeah. So like for me, what we're doing now this season is what should have been done back in 2020. Like you should have thought about what to do with Christian McCaffrey then. You should have thought about what you're going to do with everything else then. But now it's like I think the realization has occurred. Now you got a quality NFL GM in there, and now you're seeing, oh yeah, we might have to go ahead and start. I don't think we're done yet either. I think we've probably got another player or two that might be out of here by the end of the deadline.
Gotcha. So that kind of leads me into my next question. I saw a report the other day saying that the Panthers aren't really willing to deal DJ Moore because he's a foundational player, but they were willing to deal CMC. Could you kind of explain that to me? Because I thought that was a little bit surprising.
Two things. So with regards to CMC, we re-signed him in 2020. That was the same season that they made the decision to release Cam Newton. So I think it was more of a, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that was more of a, hey, we just got rid of like one of the most popular players that the franchise has ever seen, probably the most popular player this franchise has ever seen. I mean, it's between him and Steve Smith, right? So from that standpoint, when you talk about the popularity of a player, you just cut him. You got to have somebody else give a reason to come show for the tickets, because right after that happened, CMC got his long-term deal. He was the highest paid running back in the NFL at the time when that deal was done. All right. But then you fast forward to when they just made the decision to extend DJ Moore because he was coming into the final year of his deal. So they made the decision to extend him. And it ended up being a bargain once you saw some of the other contracts some of these wide receivers were getting. Before this season, DJ Moore was the only wide receiver that's had 3 consecutive years of 1,200 all-purpose yards. Like no other wide receiver in the NFL has done. So from that standpoint, it made when you call him a foundational piece, that's why. As for CMC, it kind of was about getting out of that contract ultimately, right? We're going to take a dead cap hit, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as what I thought it was going to be. But you've restructured Christian McCaffrey twice. So you kind of giving yourself an inkling that, all right, maybe we probably shouldn't have done this, but eventually you will have to pay the piper. So it'll be interesting to see what San Francisco is going to do with that contract. Once, because I think this year is nothing, right? Because you're only responsible for base this year. But next year's base, I believe, for you guys is close to $12 million per year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So this year, I believe it's like $967,000.
Yeah.
And then for the next 3 years, it's around 12-ish, a little bit above, a little bit below, just around there for those next 3 years. So yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see how they handle that. But you kind of touched on it a little bit, kind of leading into my next one. How does the Panthers community feel about trading McCaffrey away? Kind of like you said, one of the most popular players on the franchise. And do you feel like the compensation they received, do you feel like it was appropriate? Do you feel like the Panthers they kind of gave him away a little cheap? Do you think it was, what do you think about the value on that?
I'm going to keep it a buck, man. I think the fan base, like there's a lot of folks who said that we should have gotten at least a first round pick. And I absolutely disagree with that. When you could consider his injury history over the past few years, since he did re-sign that new deal, like the first 3 seasons, first season, he was sharing with Jonathan Stewart, The Daily Show. And then 18, 19, and then 2018, he became the full-time starter. Jonathan Stewart was no longer on the team. And he pretty much took the brunt of the work in 2018 and 2019. And then 2020, 2021, he didn't play more than 4 games in the season. And this year is the first year that hasn't missed a game yet. Because typically at this point, or compared to the last 2 years since he had that big deal, he hasn't he hasn't made it past this. I was kind of stunned that Jonathan Taylor got hurt before him. It was and the fact that Saquon Barkley is out there staying healthy, which is great. But that being said, I felt like we got fair value for him. In some ways, I feel like we got the better end of it, considering, but from the standpoint from both ends of the spectrum, from the 49ers perspective, it was good for you guys because now you have a running back, and you might not necessarily have to give him the same workload that we gave him because you got so many other weapons that you could give it to. You have Deebo Samuel, you have Kyle Juszczyk, you have George Kittle, you have Brandon Ayuk. You have all these different pieces that you can get the ball out of Garoppolo's hands immediately, right? So you got all these different options. So Christian McCaffrey doesn't necessarily have to take the whole load like he did in Carolina, where he was responsible for pretty much 75. He had 85% of the carries for the team. He and the touches for the team in general when you include receptions. So like you don't necessarily have to do that with him for you guys because you guys got so many different pieces of the puzzle. Your offense doesn't have to go around him. Whereas for us, because of the terrible trades that happened during the time frame, the trade for Sam Darnold, the trade for CJ Henderson, the trade for Baker Mayfield, we needed picks because you can't rebuild without draft picks, right? So we needed picks. We're not in F them picks mode like you guys and the Rams are. We needed picks, and you guys had picks to give. And so I felt like, all right, this is a pretty fair trade considering. And in some aspects, I feel like we got more than what I thought we were at this point. When you also consider the number of free agents that are going to be available after this season, and the running backs that are coming out of the draft, because running backs can be found, man. Like if you look at the last 8 Super Bowl champions, I promise you, none of those running backs was making 14, 12, 14, $16 million like CMC was. I promise you they were.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, that's why I felt like it's pretty fair, but at the same time, it's like I feel like we got more than what I thought we were going to get. I knew we were getting it.
Yeah. What would you say then to like the Panthers community? Because I think my co-host, my brother, saw a tweet you guys put out saying the 49ers don't have like a first round pick, so this is probably not going to happen. And then the trade went through, and a lot of the Panthers fans, it seemed like were pretty down on them, pretty down on the Panthers, saying that you guys got fleeced. What would you say to those Panthers fans?
You got to, and I said it on the show earlier today, you got to remember, that it's not just about the player when these trades happen. It's about the contract. It's about what that team has to take when we trade that player over to, right? So, and like between the two teams, you can negotiate whether or not you're willing to take X and Y of the contract. But when you do that, it costs you more draft picks. It could cost you some compensation. So we didn't really, I think we just did a straight trade. We did a straight trade with you guys. So I think the value that we got was the value that we got. See, the problem, and it goes back to me having that discussion point about what you do if you truly are going to do a rebuild. In 2020, prior to us re-signing, that would have been the moment to trade him for that first round pick. Or prior to right after he had his 1,000 season. That's when you do it. You don't do it after he's gotten hurt 2 consecutive years and you got signed him to this mega deal. You do it before all those things happen so you can save your cap. So from my perspective, we were very fortunate to get what we got because after the firing Matt Rule, you knew that a lot of teams were going to be coming after our players. And I know a lot of them are still going to try to go after DJ Moore. I've heard they've already asked about Brian Burns. They've asked about Derek Brown. But those guys are foundational pieces. So we're not going to trade those guys because we still have a lot of good talent on this roster. I think the key right now is to make sure, keep the players focused and keep the players not wanting to be requesting court trades at the end of the year. That's the thing I'm afraid of more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think the future's bright. The future's bright. I mean, I kind of came into this season cautiously as it is because I didn't believe Baker Mayfield was going to fix the problems anyway. So, I got attacked for that too.
Definitely. You guys definitely still have a lot of talent. Maybe you might be a couple pieces away. Probably, obviously, quarterback because Baker, Sam Darnold aren't going to cut it, of course. And you guys definitely added the ammo to kind of move up. If you're not in those top 5 picks, you definitely added the ammo to move up into the top 5 for a quarterback this year. So that'll be interesting. I agree with you that the future is bright.
So, like, I had us prior to the season winning, I think, 7 or 8 games this year. I mean, we were going to miss the playoffs, but I thought if Baker could just be average, same thing I said with Sam Darnold last year. If Baker could just be average and CMC stays healthy, we probably could put 7 to 8 wins out of this team.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of folks didn't want to hear that either, right? Because that ain't playoffs. That could potentially keep Matt Rule another year. And I'm like, yeah, that pretty much could. But all depending on how things fell. But then, the big key of us having that opportunity to get 7 wins was starting strong at the beginning of the season, like 3-0, 4-0, kind of like what we did last year with Sam Darnold. And because I knew our schedule was going to get crucial after the 4th game. After the Cardinals game, the schedule gets serious. And that's where we're at now. So, I mean, I see a couple opportunities to win a game or two, but there aren't many. In my opinion, there aren't too many because I think Atlanta, the Falcons are playing great right now. And much as it's hard for me to say it, it's the reality. They're playing really well. And now to the point where you could probably say that they got the best coach in the division, in Arthur Smith, right? So they, that'll coaching will get you further than you can believe because we have talent. We have talent in this roster, and I kept saying it's not about the talent. I think we have the talent to potentially get into the playoffs with the roster. My dilemma is the coaching.
Yeah.
So,
the 49ers fell victim. The 49ers fell victim to the Atlanta Falcons this last week. So we're well aware of how that coaching.
Y'all got so desperate that y'all traded for a running back.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so now,
but for the 49ers fans, y'all should be happy because CMC is one of the best, if not the best running back in the NFL. So you guys should be thrilled. But the key is if he stays healthy.
Definitely. So that kind of leads me in breaking down, kind of diving a little bit more into CMC as a player. In your opinion, you've watched him his whole NFL career, the whole 5 or so years that he's been playing. Do you think that he's taken a step backwards this season? Do you think he's lost a step since his rookie year, like any explosiveness from those injuries or anything like that?
No. I don't. I think he's the same. I think he's the same explosive running back that he is. But I mean, you always have to have that concern about the injury factor. I think he's going to be happy that he's going to get to go back to the Bay. I think he's gonna do well for you guys. I think he's gonna probably play through more things that I think he's gonna try to play because he's a tough guy. So if he can play, he's going to try to play. There's no doubt in my mind. Because I know even in this thousand season, when Ron Rivera was still the head coach, he was playing through injuries then. So he'll play through them if he can, because that's how tough he is. But the biggest thing that you got to take into account is that because you guys have so many weapons, you got to give him you take advantage of that, spread it out. And I know Kyle Shanahan will, man. I mean, and I'm wondering whether or not the man's going to play. I got him in a couple of my fantasy teams right now. I'm out here scrambling, trying to find a running back just in case the man doesn't play. But for this weekend at least. But I think that if you can keep CMC to around 15 to 20 touches, you're going to get the best out of CMC.
Mm-hmm.
He could probably still take 30 if you want. It's just a concern of whether or not, he's going to be able to stay healthy through the season. That's the biggest concern you guys are going to have. But I think you'll have the unique opportunity to balance that with all the different options you have.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of leads me into my next one too. So looking at his injury history, it's very well known that he's dealt with injuries, especially these last 2 years. Kyle Shanahan kind of touched on it, that in college, coming out of college, they had him rated as one of the highest medical evaluations you could have, saying that he never got really injured in college or high school and that he was always pretty healthy. And, his first few years in the NFL, he stayed pretty healthy, and then he hit that 2-year stretch of just constant injuries and missing games. Would you say that he's injury prone now, or would you say that he just had a bad run of luck lately?
Man, I don't know. I know we always utilize the word, we say the term injury prone, but it's tough, man. Because I mean, like the last injury he had for us was a non-contact injury when he had the injury against the Texans last year. So things like that, it's kind of hard. Like because he was playing at such an elite level, and because he always wants to get back there as soon as he can. So when you take all those things and then like, so he had at the beginning of September of last year against the Texans, he had the strained hamstring, right? He had the hamstring injury. And then after he had the hamstring injury, he came back. Then he had an ankle sprain. Like, it's just that is tough luck, right? So from that standpoint, I mean, all you could do is roll with the punches when it comes to that. But at the same time, you have to consider how much Carolina utilized him. I mean, you're talking 30 touches a game. So, he was the workhorse. He was average at the top, and it's like he's not averaging that this year because the team wanted to try to spread the wealth when it comes to targets to all the receivers and things and stuff. But in the past, he would average close to 10 targets a game. So he would average 10 targets a game, close to 8 catches a game, and he's still getting 20 carries. So he put in a lot of work because he was the offense for the team. Yeah, especially after Cam left. So
yeah. He's been a little banged up this year too, right? I have him on one of my fantasy teams too, and I think I remember seeing like a couple small injuries. And I know he like refuted and said if I took a piss or something, you guys would put me on the injury designation. But he's been a little bit banged up, right?
I mean, like a couple onesie twosies here and there, but like nothing that was going to jeopardize him from playing. Because I mean, this is football, and he probably gets hit more than anybody else, right? So running backs are always going to be having dinks here and there. It wasn't like the situations like last year and the year before. I know there was one time there was a panic because it just popped up randomly near the end of the week. But even he was like, "I'm playing on Sunday. Don't worry about it, guys." So he's been but it goes back to that discussion point about he'll play through stuff, right? Yeah. So he'll play through it. Like I'm not too worried about it from that standpoint. It's just I think you guys just got to monitor his workload. Like my partner Rashad he doesn't like the fact that Christian McCaffrey gets 90% of the carries. He thinks he should be getting less. I kind of disagree. I think if it was up to Rashad, he would only have him have like 15 touches a game. No more than 20. Right. Maybe less than, definitely for him, probably less than 20. But definitely, I think he will just have because he feels like we signed all these running backs. We should utilize the other running backs that we have.
Yeah.
But these coaches don't agree with Rashad.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into my next one too. The 49ers somehow didn't give up any players, like a Eli Mitchell or a Jeff Wilson. So they still have those running back. They still have a lot of running back depth as well. So you think he would possibly benefit from like a 60-40 timeshare with like a Eli Mitchell, Jeff Wilson? He's getting 60% and Eli Mitchell's getting like 40. Or do you think that you just got to feed him? Do you just need to feed him to get him going hot? And then once he gets in that mood, it's like over. Or what would you say?
All I'm gonna say is this. I hope your coaches are strong-willed. And the reason why I say that is because I guess there have been stories in the past of him not wanting to come out. That's not his MO. So I'm very intrigued to see what Kyle Shanahan's plan is with regards to how he's going to handle Christian McCaffrey, right? But then again, you never know, right? Because the history of the Shanahans probably. If you don't, I can get or your base, your fan base. I'll give you a quick history of the fans. Kyle Shanahan's dad is Mike Shanahan. And you know that Mike Shanahan's dad coached Ed McCaffrey, who's the father of Christian McCaffrey, right? Them genes are strong because Christian McCaffrey is probably a better athlete than his pops. And before the Panthers existed, I was a Broncos fan, so I watched a lot of Broncos as a child. And I watched a lot of Ed McCaffrey, and Ed McCaffrey was tough as nails too, right? So I say all that to say, Kyle Shanahan is running pretty much similar offense to what his pops ran, right? Christian McCaffrey probably learned a lot of the stuff from that, from playing with his pops. So that's why I wouldn't be shocked if they freaking bring him out there on Sunday and give him a lot of packages, more packages than we realize. You probably get like 10 or 15 touches on Sunday against the Chiefs because y'all gonna have a lot of plays between the two of you guys because that's gonna be a highly That's gonna be a good game, man. I'm looking forward to that one. But I think that a split wouldn't hurt him, but I don't know if it's gonna happen. And I talked about fantasy a bit on the show today. I think that if Kyle plans to have McCaffrey take the bulk of the load, you ain't gonna see much of Jeff Wilson. You're not gonna see much of Elijah or any other running backs that you guys have.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they should. I think with the fact that you guys have so many different options, because I think remember Deebo Samuel gets carries too. I think even though I know he's not a fan of him, he does get the carries too. But I think that you have opportunity here to lighten that load from him. So
yeah, definitely.
I'm intrigued to see how you guys how your offense is going to look. Look, man. Pretty much all you guys got to do is just be in formation. Defense don't know when that's going to happen because you're going to have like 4 different options of where the ball's going to go.
Exactly. The versatility of that offense is crazy because, like you said, you have Deebo who can take carries out of the backfield, and then you have CMC who can pretty much line up as like a slot receiver and just dominate as a slot receiver. And then you still have George Kittle at tight end, Brandon Ayuk, crispy route runner still, as well as Kyle Juszczyk, the Swiss Army knife who could pretty much almost be a tight end if he wanted to. So the versatility of the 49ers offense is going to be insane.
You got a running back that can play wide receiver, a wide receiver that can play the running back, an all-star tight end in George Kittle, and you got a fullback that can play tight end.
Yeah, exactly.
So look, I'm glad we already played you guys. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
and I think because J.C. Horn got hurt during that game. Mm-hmm. So, he was doing a really good job shutting down Deebo Samuel until he got hurt.
Yeah.
So, but, that's only one guy. When you have like 4, I don't have 4 J.C. Horns.
Yeah.
Most teams don't either.
Yeah. Not to mention, too, Trey Lance comes back next year to have that running threat as well at quarterback. Obviously, the Niners aren't going to run him as much as they did this year, but that threat of a running quarterback is still there to keep defenses and D-ends honest, so that's going to be interesting. We're looking back at McCaffrey. What does he bring to an offense for like a 49ers fan that hasn't really watched a lot of the Panthers or Christian McCaffrey? What can we expect from him, and how could he set up the offense in a certain way with his skill set?
All right. I think me and you can agree that Jimmy Garoppolo is not a great quarterback.
Yeah.
Probably
1,000%.
At best he's average. I think he's below average, but you know what I'm saying? It's a safe bet, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a quarterback like that, the goal is to keep the ball out of his hands as much as possible. Christian McCaffrey can do that for you. You can do bubble screens if you want. He can, like you said, he can put out receiver and run a slant. He can pretty much take the load out of with the running back. You guys have a physical offensive line. He feeds upon that. He's one of the masters when it comes to the yards after the catch. There's only one player in the NFL that has more yards after the catch than Christian McCaffrey, and that's Austin Eckler over the last 5 years. So from that standpoint, you pretty much have a weapon that you can put anywhere on the field, which is a beautiful thing for you guys to have. And the way that you guys have versatility, he's going to be perfect for y'all. You want to talk about a perfect match. That's you guys, right? Because I think you guys lead the league with yards after the catch anyway, period.
Yeah.
So now you got another guy that's his specialty. Very tough running back. So from that standpoint, when he's healthy, he's the best running back in the NFL. There's no question about that. I'm not denying that.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
You're gonna have, and then he's coming back to the Bay. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
so that 100%. Is a big deal for you guys, man. Yeah. So I think you guys are gonna love him. And I'm happy for Christian, man, because I love him as a player. I think people think I'm critical of Christian because of the player, but it's not that at all. It's about, for me, it was all about the salary that he was going to demand. I've always felt that way about Christian. It never was about the talent. It was always about the salary that he was going to demand, and my thought of not having to necessarily pay as much as you do for these players. That's the way I've always felt about it when it came to Christian McCaffrey. Not the player. He's the best running back in the league. I've always felt that way.
Mm-hmm. Here's our my
Appreciate it,
co-host
man.
Joseph. He said, "Let's go. Thanks for hopping on, PNP. We appreciate y'all." He did the pregame breakdown with your co-host as well that week, so that was
Yep.
good to get
Yep.
different co-hosts on the different episodes.
Yeah, man. See, I got to go into the office every day. I don't have that luxury like my brother does. So
yeah. Oh, that's
so
your brother
because
too.
when I saw the times, yes, huh?
Nice. That's your brother. That's my brother too. So we're two
No,
brothers.
no. He's not my. No, I call. We're
Oh.
frat brothers, so that is my brother. But,
okay, gotcha.
But he's he's got way more bandwidth than I do. I mean, today I was traveling from work, so I had time today.
Gotcha.
But yeah, man.
Statistically, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Statistically, looking at it, running backs when they get around this age, that 26, 27-year-old age, they tend to fall off the cliff a little bit. It's been well reported that McCaffrey, he's known to be taking care of his body, kind of like a Nick Bosa. They're like physical specimens that are always working at their bodies, eating clean. So if he was still on your team, right, would you expect or be kind of wary of a drop-off in production since he's getting to that little like age cliff? You know what I mean?
I don't think the team did, right? I mean, me, absolutely. I think 30's the number for me for a running back. And in my opinion, and that's why at the time I was really adamant about maybe we should kind of think about moving him, right? A few years ago, I was like, maybe we should think about moving him because he was already like hitting those prime numbers already at this rate, right? So you always have that concern, which goes back to that discussion point about whether or not how Kyle's going to do this. Because if I think considering his contract, y'all probably should try to split him up a little bit, and because you have the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, but that's just the nature of running backs, bro. Like they're not built to take 30 carries a game like that. They're just not like 30 touches. They're just not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. I mean, it's pretty much coming down to the depth of the running back, right? Not the depth of the running back, but more like the depth of the 30 carry a game running back. Because there ain't too many left that can do it. Christian can do it. Derrick Henry can do it.
Yeah,
Dalvin Cook can do it. But Dalvin Cook can do it. But even Dalvin Cook has had injury history.
Yeah,
he's already missed a couple games this year. So like there's running backs that still can do it, but the question is, do you want to do it with him? Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's reaching that point. He's reaching that point right now.
Yeah.
Like by the end of his deal, he'll be 30, I believe, 31, because he got drafted in 2017. So
he's 26 now, and I think he has another 3 years. So 3 or 4 years. So it's right around that age.
It'll be tough for him to get another payday like that.
Yeah,
being like 29, 30.
Definitely.
Would that be so? It's going to like the whole contract situation is going to be fascinating because he pretty much in essence has the leverage. Because if he doesn't want to restructure, if he doesn't want to take a pay cut, and I said this in a private chat to a couple of other Panthers creators, and I was going to tweet it later today too. And I said this, and I ain't put it on Twitter yet because people feel a certain type of way. But truth be told, if we didn't trade McCaffrey, we probably were going to release him at the end of the season anyway. Like I've felt that, right? If we couldn't trade McCaffrey now, I've always felt that we were going to release him at the end of the season. So we would have been either the Panthers fan base would have been sad now, or they were going to be sad later, because I believe that he was not going to be in a roster next year anyway.
Definitely.
So at least we got a second, a third, a fourth, and next year's fifth for him. So
yeah, CMC was a captain for you guys. From what you could see throughout his 5 years, what is like his leadership style? Is he kind of sit back, be quiet, lead from the rear, or is he more of a vocal, speak out type of guy?
He's probably in between, man. Because because nobody works harder than him. Nobody works harder than him. Nobody works harder than him on the practice field. Nobody works harder than him when he gets on the field. Nobody works harder than Christian McCaffrey. Nobody. So he's a lead by example guy, but he also can be vocal when need be. Oh, he's a phenomenal leader, to say the least. And it kind of sucks, man, because I watched the Panthers pressers, and I guess because he got on a flight to fly out this morning to head over to San Fran, he wasn't able to say goodbye to his teammates, and he kind of was bummed about that. So, you know, they interviewed the now starting running back Deontay Foreman, and they interviewed Sam Darnold today in the presser, and they talked about how much of a leader and how much of a great player he was. I mean, he's got some records in Carolina, man. So his legacy's got kind of set in Carolina. He's one of the best Panthers we've ever had. There's no question about that. But as a leader, he was phenomenal.
Yeah. My dad hopping on saying, I'm excited to see what we can do with him. Shanny might be the best coach to bring out the best in him. You know, that kind of brings up an interesting point. Do you think that your guys as head coaches and offensive coordinators in the past really maximized McCaffrey's potential? Or do you think that he may not have hit a level yet that he can reach, you know, being in a offensive scheme that really fits around him? Or do you think that your guys as coaches already brought that out?
I think that Christian McCaffrey was so talented. And I think during the Rivera years, I think they did maximize him. Right? Could he have gotten more with more pieces around him? Absolutely. Right? Because in 2017 through 2019, when he was healthy, I believe they maximized him. But I think he probably could have had more yards if he had a better offensive line. If he had, you know, more other weapons around him that could, you know, not take the pressure off him, because he used to get 8-man boxes all the time. Yeah. All the time. And he still produced the way that he did. So a lot of the times he had to do it on his own because of how bad our line was. So
definitely,
I think with you guys, I think there's man, I see how you guys block. I see how physical your line is, and I see how good your team is. He's gonna have some enjoyable moments when he sees these holes open up for him that he always had to get through sometimes. So all right, I'll put it to you like this. This year's probably the best offensive line he ever had with us. Right? But he's had better totals in the past, considering like his first 3 years in the league, right? He's had really phenomenal totals because he had to do a lot of that himself. Yeah, our offensive line hasn't been our offensive line right now is probably above average. But the last 2 or 3 years, we've had one of the worst lines in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
do you think kind of an interesting debate that's been going on with 49er fans lately? You know, the Niners have been extremely successful in finding later round draft picks. You know, Eli Mitchell is I think a 6th or 7th round pick. You have Raheem Mostert, who is undrafted, who played extremely well for the 49ers. Matt Breida, undrafted guy. You have Jeff Wilson, who is also an undrafted player as well. And they produce like at an extreme level. You know, they're putting up 4.5 yards per carry. Do you think Christian McCaffrey is going to bring a different value? You know, do you think he's going to like prove his value? Because these undrafted guys are putting up great numbers. Do you think CMC is just going to blow those numbers out of the water because you figure he's proven in the NFL already, and like he was an early draft pick too? So do you think he's going to blow out those numbers from those guys that were like the 5th, 6th, 7th round picks?
So here's my thing when it comes to that, right? And I've always, and as a Panthers fan, I've seen us pay an exorbitant amount of money to running backs. At one point, we had 2 running backs that were part of the top 6 highest paid running backs in the league. Like when we had Jonathan Stewart, at one point we had Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, and they were 2 of the highest paid running backs in the National Football League, and they were both on our roster, right? So I say all that to say you can find production with running backs in the later rounds. Yeah. And now that being said, Christian McCaffrey is one of the best in the league, and I think right now he's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Now, if you call that blowing it away, then absolutely. He'll definitely cover that, right? But it all depends on what it's about the balance, right? When you take into account the salary and things of that sort too.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I literally on Twitter, one of my first followers, I guess we can call it, from the Panther Nation podcast, my boy Jarrett, my brother Jarrett, he pretty much said the last 8 Super Bowl champs leading rusher: Cam Akers, Leonard Fournette, Darrell Williams, Sony Michel, LeGarrette Blount's 2 years in a row, C.J. Anderson, and LeGarrette Blount.
Yep.
So like when you take it, so the goal is to get to the chip. And the last 8 champions don't necessarily have that. But I still think you guys got a legitimate shot to get there this year.
Mm-hmm.
But y'all damn near got there last year without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all about perspective, right?
Yep, definitely. That's a huge debate, especially within me and my brother even debate about that too.
Like it's because like the way, and I said it on my show today. Like back in the 90s, you had to have a running back like a Christian McCaffrey, or like back then it would be like an Emmitt Smith or a Terrell Davis or a Barry Sanders. You know, you had to have that type of workload type of back to have some level of success in the National Football League. But now in this era, the way that we play football now, you need to have a wide receiver one. Like that's what when you talk about a skill position player, you need to have a wide receiver one.
Yeah. Definitely.
You know, it's changed. You don't necessarily have to have a top 5 level running back, which is why you're seeing a plethora of running backs that are going to be available in free agency. And I promise you, not too many of them are going to be making as much as Christian McCaffrey is right now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So. That leading into my final question now, looking at it from either side, who do you think got the better side of the deal? Or do you think it was pretty balanced given both teams' circumstances?
I think it's pretty balanced because like I said earlier, I felt like I knew we weren't going to get a first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Like everybody was saying, it was going to be a first round pick. And I'm like, no, it's not. I was like, because of the contract. So the fact that we got a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth for 2024, I thought that the Carolina Panthers got a pretty good haul. That being said, considering the fact that the 49ers had some injury trouble at the running back position with Elijah Mitchell already on IR. Right now, you've been running with Jeff Wilson Jr., which I do have in my fantasy team as well, and a couple of my fantasy leagues as well. Mm-hmm. And you saw that, hey, I could potentially get somebody that could pretty much do everything, that could probably understand this offense very fast and walk in and be like an X factor in my offense, like Christian McCaffrey. So now you have 2 of them with Deebo Samuel. I think it was a no-brainer for San Francisco because I think they think that they're really close and they're trying to win that Super Bowl now. So for you guys, I think it makes the most sense. But that being said, because you guys made the trade, that means you're definitely committed to him for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like this season and the following season, no matter what happens. Yeah. Then after that, you guys are going to have to make a decision how y'all want to handle it. But there's no doubt in my mind that you guys are going to be committed to him for the least at a minimum to the remainder of this year and the following year.
Yeah,
at a minimum.
Definitely. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on. If you want to let our subscribers know, where they can check you guys out, and then just let them know a little bit about your podcast too, if you want to, real quick before you get out of here.
Absolutely. So I'm Dave. I'm one half of the Panther Nation podcast. You can follow us all on Twitter at Panther Nation PC. We're the largest independent podcast on YouTube right now. Just look us up. Just search Panther Nation podcast, and you'll see us. It'll be P&P, Rashad, and Dave show on YouTube. We just had a great interview with Steve Smith Sr. yesterday. So check out that interview. We got to talk to him for over an hour. It was a phenomenal interview. We normally have those type of interviews to our patrons, but we decided to bring it to all the people for this one because I thought this was a big enough interview and worthy of that. So if you haven't seen it already, it is a great interview. Go check it out. We go live every Monday. Our normal times at 8:30, but Rashad out here trying to get degrees and certificates, so we've been moving it to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Monday we go live. We talk about the game. I do a fantasy show on Sundays. I do a fantasy Q&A show at 11:15. We go over inactives. I answer questions about your options with regards to fantasy. If you need a miracle player because you played somebody on Thursday night, I'm here to help you there from that regard. We'll go over DFS. We'll talk about underdog fantasy and hires and lowers and things of that sort on Sunday morning. On Tuesdays, I do a fantasy show to talk about waiver wire options, long-term, what you should think about doing right now with your waiver wires as well. We normally also try to do a pregame prior to the game as well, typically on Wednesdays and Thursdays for that as well during the season. But we've already started mock draft Mondays. Rashad's starting to do mock draft Mondays already. He did a second one this Monday. We do mock draft Mondays. We start doing draft previews very soon as well. So be on the lookout for that, because now that we kind of have an idea where things are about to go, Rashad is already starting to break down film. So get ready, guys. That's going to start very soon. He's starting earlier than normal. I'll put it to you that way. Typically, it doesn't happen until halfway through the season, but we go live every Monday between 8:30 and 9 p.m. even in the off season. Every Monday we're on.
Gotcha, definitely. And you do too, man. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on. You do the fantasy stuff on the Panthers Nation podcast channel as well, or is it a different channel?
Yep. Everything's on our channel. Everything's on the channel.
Have to check that out for sure. Thanks for coming on. Second time on the channel, so hopefully we can collab again in the future. You know, us going on yours, you coming on ours for something else. So appreciate it.
Not a question, man. You know where to find us.
Yep. Cool. Have a good one.
You too.